Hello, truth seekers, welcome to Cruise TV, your #1 YouTube channel that provides you with facts, with zero to very minimal errors. Today we all should be able to replicate being stoic, with these 9 stoic exercises explained. 1. The dichotomy of control. The chief task in life is simply this: to identify and separate matters so that I can say clearly to myself which are externals not under my control, and which have to do with the choices I actually control. Where then do I look for good and evil? Not to uncontrollable externals, but within myself to the choices that are my own. The single most important practice in Stoic philosophy is differentiating between what we can change and what we can't. What we have influence over and what we do not. A flight is delayed because of weather. No amount of yelling at an airline representative will end a storm. No amount of wishing will make you taller or shorter or born in a different country. No matter how hard you try, you can't make someone like you. And on top of that, time spent hurling yourself at these immovable objects is time not spent on the things we can change. Return to this question daily, in each and every trying situation. Journal and reflect on it constantly. If you can focus on making clear what parts of your day are within your control and what parts are not, you will not only be happier, you will have a distinct advantage over other people who fail to realize they are fighting an unwinnable battle. 2. Journal. Few care now about the marches and countermarches of the Roman commanders. What the centuries have clung to is a notebook of thoughts by a man whose real life was largely unknown, who put down in the midnight dimness not the events of the day or the plans of the morrow, but something of far more permanent interest, the ideals and aspirations that a rare spirit lived by. Epictetus the slave. Marcus Aurelius the emperor. Seneca the power broker and playwright. These 3 radically different men led radically different lives. But they seem to have one habit in common: journaling. It would be Epictetus who would admonish his students that philosophy was something they should write down day by day, that this writing was how they should exercise themselves. Seneca's favorite time to journal was in the evenings. When darkness had fallen and his wife had gone asleep, he explained to a friend, "I examine my entire day and go back over what I've done and said, hiding nothing from myself, passing nothing by." Then he would go to bed, finding that the sleep which follows this self-examination was particularly sweet. And Marcus, he was the most prodigious of journalers, and we are lucky enough that his writings survive to us, appropriately titled, Taris Hiauten Tariis Hiauten, or To Himself. In Stoicism, the art of journaling is more than some simple diary. This daily practice is the philosophy. Preparing for the day ahead. Reflecting on the day that has passed. Reminding oneself of the wisdom we have learned from our teachers, from our reading, from our own experiences. It's not enough to simply hear these lessons once. Instead, one practices them over and over again, turns them over in their mind, and most importantly, writes them down and feels them flowing through their fingers in doing so. Stoicism is designed to be a practice and a routine. It's not a philosophy you read once and magically understand at the soul level. No, it's a lifelong pursuit that requires diligence and repetition, and concentration. Pierre Hadot called it spiritual exercising. That's one of the benefits of the page a day, with monthly themes, format we organize the Stoics into, and the weekly themes in the daily Stoic journal. It's putting one thing up for you to review, to have at hand, and to fully digest. Not in passing. Not just once. But every single day over the course of a year, and preferably a year in and year out. And if Epictetus is right, it's something you're supposed to keep within reach at all times, which is why a collection of the greatest hits, presented daily, was so appealing to us. 3. Practice misfortune. It is in times of security that the spirit should be preparing itself for difficult times. While fortune is bestowing favors on it, is the time for it to be strengthened against her rebuffs. Seneca, who enjoyed great wealth as the advisor of Nero, suggested that we ought to set aside a certain number of days each month to practice poverty. Take a little food, wear your worst clothes, get away from the comfort of your home and bed. Put yourself face to face with want. He said, you'll ask yourself, is this what I used to dread? It's important to remember that this is an exercise and not a rhetorical device. He doesn't mean, think about, misfortune, he means live it. Comfort is the worst kind of slavery because you're always afraid that something or someone will take it away. But if you can not just anticipate but practice misfortune, then chance loses its ability to disrupt your life. Emotions like anxiety and fear have their roots in uncertainty and rarely in experience. Anyone who has made a big bet on themselves knows how much energy both states can consume. The solution is to do something about that ignorance. Make yourself familiar with the things, the worst-case scenarios, that you're afraid of. Practice what you fear, whether a simulation in your mind or in real life. The downside is almost always reversible or transient. 4. Train perceptions. Choose not to be harmed and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed and you haven't been. The Stoics had an exercise called turning the obstacle upside down. What they meant to do was make it impossible to not practice the art of philosophy. Because if you can properly turn a problem upside down, every bad becomes a new source of good. Suppose for a second that you are trying to help someone and they respond by being surly or unwilling to cooperate. Instead of making your life more difficult, the exercise says, they're actually directing you towards new virtues. For example, patience or understanding. Or, the death of someone close to you, a chance to show fortitude. Marcus Aurelius described it like this. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. It should sound familiar because it is the same thinking behind Obama's teachable moments. Right before the election, Joe Klein asked Obama how he'd made his decision to respond to the Reverend Wright scandal. He said something like, when the story broke I realized the best thing to do wasn't damage control, it was to speak to Americans like adults. And what he ended up doing was turning a negative situation into the perfect platform for his landmark speech about race. The common refrain about entrepreneurs is that they take advantage of, even create, opportunities. To the Stoic, everything is opportunity. The Reverend Wright scandal, a frustrating case where your help goes unappreciated, the death of a loved one, none of those are opportunities, in the normal sense of the word. In fact, they are the opposite. They are obstacles. What a Stoic does is turn every obstacle into an opportunity. There is no good or bad to the practicing Stoic. There is only perception. You control perception. You can choose to extrapolate past your first impression. If you tie your first response to dispassion, you'll find that everything is simply an opportunity. Note, this exercise served as the inspiration behind the obstacle is the way. 5. Remember it's all ephemeral. Alexander the Great and his mule driver both died and the same thing happened to both. Marcus Aurelius. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself a simple and effective reminder to help him regain perspective and stay balanced. Run down the list of those who felt intense anger at something, the most famous, the most unfortunate, the most hated, the most whatever. Where is all that now? Smoke, dust, legend, or not even a legend. Think of all the examples. And how trivial the things we want so passionately are. It is important to note that passion here isn't the modern usage we're familiar with as in enthusiasm or caring about something. As Don Robertson explains in his book when the Stoics discuss overcoming passions, which they call pathei, they refer to the irrational, unhealthy, and excessive desires and emotions. Anger would be a good example. What is important to remember, and this is the crucial bit, they seek to replace them with eupathei, such as joy instead of excessive pleasure. Returning to the point of the exercise, it's simple. Remember how small you are. For that matter, remember how small most everything is. Remember that achievements can be ephemeral and that your possession of them is for just an instant. If everything is ephemeral, what does matter? Right now matters. Being a good person and doing the right thing right now, that's what matters, and that's what was important to the Stoics. Take Alexander the Great, who conquered the known world and had cities named in his honor. This is common knowledge. The Stoics would also point out that, once while drunk, Alexander got into a fight with his dearest friend, Cletus, and accidentally killed him. Afterward, he was so despondent that he couldn't eat or drink for 3 days. Sophists were called from all over Greece to see what they could do about his grief, to no avail. Is this the mark of a successful life? From a personal standpoint, it matters little if your name is emblazoned on a map if you lose perspective and hurt those around you. Learn from Alexander's mistake. Be humble and honest and aware. That is something you can have every single day of your life. You'll never have to fear someone taking it from you or, worse still, it takes over you. 6. Take the view from above. How beautifully Plato put it. Whenever you want to talk about people, it's best to take a bird's eye view and see everything all at once, either of gatherings, armies, farms, weddings and divorces, births and deaths, noisy courtrooms or silent spaces, every foreign people, holidays, memorials, markets, all blended together and arranged in a pairing of opposites. Marcus would often practice an exercise that is referred to as taking the view from above, or Plato's view. It invites us to take a step back, zoom out and see life from a higher vantage point than our own. This exercise, envisioning all the millions and millions of people, all the armies, farms, weddings and divorces, births and deaths, prompts us to take perspective and, just like the previous exercise, remind us how small we are. It reorients us, and as a Stoic scholar, Pierre Hadot put it, the view from above changes our value judgments on things. Luxury, power, war, and the worries of everyday life become ridiculous. Seeing how small we are in the grand scheme of things is only one portion of this exercise. The second, more subtle point, is to tap into what the Stoics call sympatheia, or a mutual interdependence with the whole of humanity. As the astronaut Edgar Mitchell, one of the first people to actually experience a real view from above, put it, in outer space, you develop an instant global consciousness, a people orientation, an intense dissatisfaction with the state of the world, and a compulsion to do something about it. Let us know right in the comment section exactly how you view the world at large. 7. Memento Mori. Meditate on your mortality. Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing. Let us balance life's books each day. Ellipsis. The one who puts the finishing touches on their life each day is never short of time. The quote from Seneca above takes part of Memento Mori, the ancient practice of reflection on mortality that goes back to Socrates, who said that the proper practice of philosophy is about nothing else but dying and being dead. In his Meditations, Marcus Aurelius wrote that you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. That was a personal reminder to continue living a life of virtue now, and not wait. Meditating on your mortality is only depressing if you miss the point. The Stoics find this thought invigorating and humbling. It is not surprising that one of Seneca's biographies is titled Dying Every Day. After all, it is Seneca who urged us to tell ourselves, you may not wake up tomorrow, when going to bed, and you may not sleep again, when waking up, as reminders of our mortality. Or as another Stoic, Epictetus, urged his students, keep death and exile before your eyes each day, along with everything that seems terrible. By doing so, you'll never have a base thought nor will you have excessive desire. Use those reminders and meditate on them daily. Let them be the building blocks of living your life to the fullest and not wasting a second. 8. Premeditatio Malorum. What is quite unlooked for is more crushing in its effect, and unexpectedness adds to the weight of a disaster. This is a reason for ensuring that nothing ever takes us by surprise. We should project our thoughts ahead of us at every turn and have in mind every possible eventuality instead of only the usual course of events. Rehearse them in your mind: exile, torture, war, shipwreck. All the terms of our human lot should be before our eyes. The Premeditatio Malorum, the premeditation of evils, is a Stoic exercise of imagining things that could go wrong or be taken away from us. It helps us prepare for life's inevitable setbacks. We don't always get what is rightfully ours, even if we've earned it. Not everything is as clean and straightforward as we think it may be. Psychologically, we must prepare ourselves for this to happen. It is one of the most powerful exercises in the Stoics' toolkit to build resilience and strength. Seneca, for instance, would begin by reviewing or rehearsing his plans, say, to take a trip. And then, in his head, or in journaling as we said above, he would go over the things that could go wrong or prevent it from happening. A storm could arise, the captain could fall ill, the ship could be attacked by pirates. Nothing happens to the wise man against his expectation, he wrote to a friend. Nor do all things turn out for him as he wished but as he reckoned, and above all, he reckoned that something could block his plans. By doing this exercise, Seneca was always prepared for disruption and always working that disruption into his plans. He was fitted for defeat or victory. 9. Amor fati. To love only what happens, what was destined. No greater harmony. Marcus Aurelius. The great German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche would describe his formula for human greatness as amor fati, a love of fate. That one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. Not merely bear what is necessary, still less conceal it, but love it. The Stoics were not only familiar with this attitude but they embraced it. 2,000 years ago, writing in his own personal journal which would become known as Meditations, Emperor Marcus Aurelius would say, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." Another Stoic, Epictetus, who as a crippled slave has faced adversity after adversity, echoed the same. Do not seek for things to happen the way you want them to. Rather, wish that what happens to happen the way it happens, then you will be happy.